Welcome back everybody to Rylee Reloaded. Now if you know me and my channel, I like to do these polls every now and then where I ask questions about what's going on inside of the Destinies. Yes. Sorry, I kind of muddled up my words there. I don't know where my brain went. If you've seen my channel, I'm sure you've come across my polls where I like to ask questions about what's going on inside of the Destiny community, things that I find interesting. But usually when I see these from other creators, if you're not there for the poll and once you answer, that's kind of it. They're kind of just gone from memory. So what I like to do is I like to take the polls that I've made in the past, give you the results of them after a good amount of time has passed, and respond to 5 comments that are in them. Now the 5 comments, they're not going to be the top comments. I really wish I could sort them that way. The way YouTube displays them and the way I capture them currently, if there's a better way, I'll find it eventually. I just take the 5 that are on the top and then I run with that. So in this series, I like to take what my community and people that have come into my community just to give their opinions on Destiny, I like to take that and give my thoughts on what they have to say. Now the last one I made, that one went on for way too long. Holy shit. I was working on that one for a while because I left so many polls and I gave detailed descriptions. So hopefully with this one, it's a little bit lighter, but still good for something you can just put on the background and enjoy while you're playing Destiny yourself, which is how I personally like to watch videos. I just like to have audio in the background that I can listen to and just kind of think and form my own opinions on as it just plays. So, with that being said, let's dive into the first poll. So in poll number 1, I asked, do you like when there's occasional lulls, no new content, like the ones we have this November? I like using them to catch up and hunt down collectibles. It also lets me play more casually, which really helps dealing with burnout. And out of 1,104 votes, 62% of people said they like them, and 38% of people said that they are boring. The first comment we have is from Shanya, god damn it, brain no worky. Shanyuan DB says, I actually quite like the opportunity to take a break. I love Destiny, and as boring as the dry periods can be, it gives you a chance to take a step back and do other things. It helps you feel fresher and more ready to dive in when there's new content drops. There's a lot of players out there that I know that like to speedrun content and then sit there like, where my content? If you just take your time and enjoy it, you know, you're always going to have people that play Destiny in a different way because the Destiny that I play isn't the same Destiny that other people play. I like to personally take my time, enjoy the scenery, enjoy the content that's on display, but some people do get great joy out of doing things like speedrunning. But this is a sentiment that I personally agree with because I do like to take breaks and enjoy the content that's on there at my pace, which is why I'm kind of against the DCV when it came up, because that makes you have to enjoy content at Bungie's pace. Even though they are giving us a big amount of time, eventually your stuff does get vaulted, and that takes away the aspect of the game where you can really sort of slow down and enjoy it at your own pace. Sunshot with an ornament, one of the goats, says, I like it. Feels nice to just play some other games while I wait for the next DLC. And that's where I stand with it as well. Noah comes in saying, I'm really hoping after next week they announce they're undoing the GM selection menu nerfs, as we haven't even unlocked the menu yet, and it even seems to hate the change universally. If I'm waiting an entire month for additional content, I'd at least like to grind out exotics, adepts, ascendant shards through the fast nightfalls, but this season's options suck. I only have 2 relatively decent weeks out of the whole season. I'm just gonna bounty grind with my friends and then do Master Templar runs on loop for ascendant shards. Now keep in mind when this was written, this was at the start of the season, when we just started Season of the Lost, so some things in this might be a little bit off because I've been lazy and I haven't been keeping up with these videos. Forgive me for that. I really want to be more interactive, but things just get a little bit swamped. And I'm unsure as to what he means by the GM selection menu nerfs, because I think you unlock that at the end of the season. I don't know if that was always the case, but it might just be. I'd have to read into that more to really know where he's coming from. GT Hulk H JJ. Well, you wouldn't feel forced to play when there's content if Bungie really cared about FOMO. You know, I hate FOMO, but at the same time, it makes my stuff more unique and rare. I think I'd be more okay with it if I didn't have to pay for it, because I usually buy content. It's like, oh, it's gone in a season. But at least give me the chance to unlock my previous season passes instead of just rushing me to finish them that season and get them out the door as soon as I can. It would just be a lot better and healthier for the game overall if they just chose these options that respected your money more than just sort of throwing you under the bus and getting rid of content that you paid good money for, that you probably worked hard for. You know, it doesn't apply if you're a rich guy, but most of us, me included, I'm from the gutter. I'm broke. But it would be nicer if they made these more consumer-friendly switches. So 1-2-2-1-2. I'm a relatively new player, so it gives me a chance to try and learn old raids, which is super fun. That was one of my favorite things to do when I came back into Destiny. I think I left for quite a while, but one of the things that was really fun to me is when we had all those raids and all the new stuff to experience, because that was all stuff that I hadn't even done before. I didn't even own like the sleeper simulant. I didn't own any of like the exotics and everything, and I had a backlog of content that was pretty vast, and there was tons to do and unlock. And I had so much fun learning the raids, getting teams together, and finally doing that deep dive, which I think is going to be a little bit less than now now because they have all these content locking and FOMO everywhere. But at the same time, we do get that year's worth of time. But if you're not actively engaged in Destiny, it would be nicer to have this sort of stuff. You know, I just kind of wish that DCV wasn't a thing, honestly, because I saw that picture of like the Destiny 2 sunrise thing, and it was beautiful. They had all the worlds and everything, and I was like, oh yeah. But yeah, I like having time to catch up and doing things at my own pace. Like with this extra long season in between the Witch Queen, it's given me so much time to build up my arsenal and chase some old achievements that I've actually been having a pretty good time with it. And I've actually been able to take my time in this vast amount of time in between releases. But then again, I usually speed run the seasons in the beginning. I get all my ornaments, finish off the story, and then I'll just chill for the rest of the season. So it's pretty nice that we have this these sort of breaks in between. So moving on to poll number 2. This isn't a poll, this is more of a question I just wanted to know the answer to. I asked, what's the most prestigious seal in Destiny a Guardian can own? The largest flex, if you will. And in the comments, I managed to bait Forcer into my comments section. That's right, you fucking nerd. Welcome to my house. But Forcer responded with Shadow, Blacksmith, Reckoner. All very rare titles that got sunset and are becoming rare with time. There's no one there that I look at that just makes me go, please, go outside. It's gotta be Blacksmith. Honestly, the amount of forges you had to run, you gotta eat, sleep, and shit, Destiny. Reckoner was a considerable amount of effort as well, because the amount of gear you had to get and the amount of motes you had to collect and run through the Reckoning was huge. So those are very rare titles, and I would say that out of all 3 of those, the hardest one to get is probably going to be Blacksmith. Unless there's something I'm forgetting and Reckoner was just a pain in the ass, which it probably was. Next up, we have Deranged Burger, who says, Riven's Bane, in my opinion. The hardest raid, and then the challenges, and add Petra's run on top of that. So using statistics to figure out which one of these on warmind.io, I don't know how accurate this is, using their adjusted rarity calculations, they think that 2.9% of people actually own Reckoner, which honestly surprised me because I did think that Shadow would be higher up there, but Shadow is only 4.2%. But Riven's Bane is actually not that rare in all things considered. For their adjusted rarity, it is 5%. Shadow is 4.2, Fatebreaker is 4.2, Blacksmith is 3.8, and Reckoner is 2.9, making Reckoner the rarest seal. So Fire in the Hole says, in terms of skill, Riven's Bane. In terms of legacy and playtime, Wayfarer is respectable if you got it before the loot for the Mars weapons was made not time-gated. I had spent over a year in Mars doing meticulous shit every week. By the time my brother starts playing, he gets all the Mars weapons on a knockout basis, with no duplicate. All in 1 week, because by then Bungie removed the time-gating. In terms of skill, I'd say Riven's Bane is pretty high up there just because there are a lot of challenges and Petra's run and all that. But in terms of like sheer playtime, and sheer force of will, the amount of garbage you had to do, Blacksmith is still at the top of my list. Dealing with the AFK farmers when you were doing a forge, my god. This year's Jin would always get teams and he'd try to solo it because the guys were just sitting there farming this out. It had me sitting there begging for the sweet release of death, and I didn't even get it. I gave up because of that. But thank goodness I got my Izanagi's Burden and my Catalyst, so I'm happy. Mortimer Balbriggan says probably Reckoner. It takes away your mental sanity and it is also the rarest title. Yeah, Reckoner. When I looked at all the Gambit stuff that I had to get and how much Gambit I had to play, even then, that was when Gambit was somewhat decent, back before they took away all the good stuff in Gambit and just left it bare bones and broken. I used to love Gambit. I'd jump in there and play all the time with Inertia. She was actually such a fan of Gambit. She played that mode more than anything before everything just got butchered and our arsenal got like maxed out and now it's Snowball Fest no matter which way the match goes. But moving on to poll 3, I asked, does the helmet truly always stay on? Bungie, please give me customization. But the poll had received 6,297 votes, and out of that, 59% of people said the helmet will always be on. That is a lot of people who just will not show their face. 6% of people said the helmet isn't on, which we now know that 6% of that 6,000 are absolute psychopaths, and 34% of people said, why is my character so ugly? Bungie, help. I made them 7 years ago. I fall into that category. Moving on to the comments. Stupid the Fish, a regular here. I chose Exo for the simple reason of if a motion of action looks weird, it won't make me think it's weird, since it's not a human figure. If a motion looks funny on a human figure, it won't look weird on an Exo because then my brain can go, oh, it's a robot. It's just programmed to do that. You know, Stupid the Fish. For the name, you're not that stupid. That's a pretty good idea if you think about it. I went with Awoken because I was like, hey, Blueberry Boy, why not? And back then, I made my guy look just hideous. He looks, like I said, he looks like Rick, but blue from Rick and Morty. I look at it now and I'm just like, you disgusting abomination. Never take your helmet off. But next up we have Autism Cat that says they should renew character creation with perhaps better options and far less hideous things. Also, they should give us the option that allows us to change our character's appearance without deleting our whole character again. That's something that's in a lot of games, and I know even a lot of MMOs will like sell off sort of little packs to help you customize your things, but the customization for faces and all that is pretty bare bones in Destiny to the point where it doesn't really matter. I would love to see more cosmetic options. Like if you look in Warframe, the amount of cosmetic options that you actually do get is pretty big, but there's many MMOs that do have that feature in there. One thing I like is how Monster Hunter does it. They give you a vast array of options in the base game, and then you can buy extra hairstyles afterwards or mod them in, but I bought a couple just because I support their development and the stuff that they create. They're fantastic with the way they make stuff. But yeah, just give us the option to create characters, add in a couple more cosmetics. I'd be okay with shelling out like $1 or $2 if it gave me a beard. I'm a hairy man in real life. I want to introduce a little bit of the wild side. Jacob Rhodes says, you know the answer. It's in the lore. The helmet did stay on. Getting dirty. Cinnamon Skateboarding says, I pity the fool who made an ugly character and regrets it. Rule number 1 to playing an RPG. If you're unsure if you'll have the chance to recustomize your character, don't make it a joke. I didn't make it a joke. My taste evolved over time. I don't like you, Cinnamon. Don't you dare point out my flaws. I don't want to do what Rust did where they like lock your character to your ID. It's like, oh, it's like real life. I think they actually said in an article or something, it said, it's like real life. Who you are is who you are. You can't change your face. It's like, oh, I'm playing a video game. I want to be able to have these options to change my character the way that I want to change my character. I'm broke in real life. I want to take that too with me. This is my fictional world. Let me have it. But Sanity Zero comes in and says, it still baffles me how we can't just change our face whenever we want. You can do that in plenty of other games, i.e. Monster Hunter World, which is what I was getting at before. You have the option in many other games. It's not even that hard of a thing or something that's even new to gaming. It's something that we've had for a while, yet we're not able to do it. Multi-million-dollar studio with 600 employees. Can't let me put a beard on my face. Meanwhile, you have modders out there creating whole games in their spare time for pennies. Like, I'll do it for a sucker. But moving on to poll number 4, I asked, do you like Trials of Osiris? And out of 2,614 people, 67% said no, and 33% said yes. Now, if you were to ask me what my opinion on Trials of Osiris is, yeah, it's pretty good. I do enjoy playing it, and I've even played in the Flawless pool for a little bit, and it's not that much different from the normal pool. Just every now and then you get that one team that just absolutely wrecks you and you're like, okay, yeah, fair, you won it. I don't mind getting out-strategied, but they have managed to do some work to Trials of Osiris where it's not just such a pain in the ass, but still Destiny Crucible has a ways to go. If I'm looking for something fair, balanced, in a competitive mode where I can really just sort of be on par in the same sandbox as my enemies, I'm not going to pick Destiny. Destiny is like whack with its PvP, but there's something kind of nice about that chaos in a way. You can make anything work if you get good enough. I know that for a fact, but at the same time, there's kind of that beauty in the chaos. Same type of reason why I would play Tarkov or something, but now that they've gotten a lot of things sorted out, they've done a lot of balancing work and weapon archetypes aren't too vastly, there's not just like one that overshadows everything. So in the comments, we have Nicholas Casme say, I tolerate it for the loot. And only since the new loot system this season, frankly, I think the ethos of the playlist just doesn't work for a game filled to the brim with cheesy weapons and abilities. But it's what we have. And that's true. That's what I was getting at before. It does have all those cheesy weapons and abilities, but they are bringing them more in line recently, so you can kind of tell how old this sort of post is. It was a couple months ago before they did all these like vast balance changes. Before the 30th anniversary event, I know that for a fact. So now that things are more in line, I would be interested in redoing this poll just to see where it goes. But Mage7734 says, love the gear, want the fucking robe, but I hate doing it. So far, my best experience with it was in freelance. At least then I wasn't running into flawless clans constantly. I normally try running it with my buddies too, but never have any luck. Granted, we're kind of crap at PvP at best, but it's always Death Toasters and Myths we're teamed against. That's something I like too, that they've actually managed to split players, so you have that solo queue. A team has people of equal skill on it. The people that are communicating and the people that aren't are definitely going to be in a better position no matter what you do. So going up against clans that are on the mic when you're with some nerds, I mean, sure, you can jump into team chat, but the team chat is kind of poo and you never know who you're going to get if you'll work well with them, whereas clans are usually pre-calculated. They work together anyway. I do prefer freelance a little bit more. Same thing with Iron Banner. Dugan Elliott says the changes they made this season have me liking it more than I used to. Liam Odell says, I think that Trials has been actively detrimental to the health of the game. Destiny will never truly be competitive like Rainbow Six or how Call of Duty used to be. I don't think that Trials is detrimental to the health of the game overall, just because having those competitive modes and all these different avenues to play the game is a thing that's good. The more systems and stuff you have to interact with just increases the longevity of your game, and PvP is a great way to do that. And while I know that it will never truly be competitive like those games, once you get out of the mindset that it needs to be, that's when things get a little bit more enjoyable. But at the same time, it does feel real nasty to go up against these people who are just sweating it up. I'll always say, if you're using like the meta build, you have a tiny PP. But if you're using something like fucking Skyburner's Oath or some shit, you are an alpha unit. Impulse says, I like the concept, but hate the matchmaking. I'll play with friends, but our rankings ranging from top 15% to 25%. And half the time we'll match with a team where everyone is in the top 0.1% and it's just frustrating to go up against. That's my biggest problem with Trials, is just the matchmaking and ranking system of the game. So many competitive games now, or games that have these sort of competitive modes, have a ranking system where the better you perform, the better you go. Like, look at Counter-Strike. It's been alive for like years at this point. Way more years than Destiny, and it has a ranking system. It has features of a competitive mode. But Trials is dependent on you stomping a whole set of 7 people. It is good, and it shows that you're skilled if you can pull that off, which I've done a couple times, but at the same time, that isn't the healthiest for the competitive nature, and you're gonna have people getting toxic, you're gonna have people doing all this stuff. There's no way around it. I'll admit, I felt inner conflict there. It was like 3-0, and then I came back and beat them. I double tap B. I bagged. It felt good. I let go of my humanity for a minute. But moving on to poll number 5, I asked, do champions restrict endgame PvE and why? 5,555 people voted, and out of that, 65% said that it does, and 35% said that it doesn't. Now, endgame PvP is very formulaic in my eyes. I mean, you get one way to run your builds, and that's about it. You try to join an LFG, and you're not running well, bubble, or an invis, and you are completely useless. If you just stand behind cover or somewhere that's relatively safe, usually you can overcome most of the stuff, and if you have a half-competent team, they're not that difficult. So champions, they do restrict which weapons you use, and they try to keep the meta fresh that way. Eventually, there comes a point where it is a little bit much. You know, when champions are first released, you're like, hey, that's neat. And then, you know, the next time you do it, next season, you're a little bit less enthusiastic about it, and it just keeps going until you, like, reach the seasons, like 6 seasons later, where you're thinking, it's neat, but I have either or. So no matter which way you look at it, I do think that champions do restrict the endgame PvE. But let's take a look at the comments. Now, I only have one comment for this one because Flustered Weasel went off. He popped off on this one. Now, this is a good comment, too. But he says, I think endgame PvE is a pain in the ass, and it very well should be. Endgame PvE is Nightfall and raids like we saw in Destiny 1. This is great. However, PvE players that master these things and can run them blindfolded are no longer challenged. With champions, this allows for heavier emphasis on strategy, positioning, and efficiency. Builds must be perfected, positioning is very relevant, ammo regulation is key, teamwork becomes essential 24/7, and honestly, Master Vogue and GM Nightfalls are the only PvE activities where I can truly say stats matter. This is the peak endgame. We are given exotics with intrinsic anti-barrier and overload, which provide a nice alternatives to the allowed mods for the season and excel at their jobs quite well. Here is where I think the problem is. Rewards suck for this extreme endgame. I'm sorry, but if I complete Master Vogue on a Titan, the game better not fucking hand me a 63 stat chest piece with 20 fucking mobility, despite having intellect armor on my ghost. I better not get a chance at the weapon I want with another chance at god roll. For the raw people have to, Jesus Christ, Weasel, calm down, take it easy. This man's passionate. People have to go through, and their stupid amount of time it takes compared to all other activities. Armor needs to drop 67 plus. Stats for armor needs to be dependent on your focus and class ability regen. I want intellect and resilience. I don't want mobility. I don't want recovery. When I need recovery, I will spec into it, but I want to see those 28 resilience and 29 intellect stat distributions for spending an hour on one encounter for the hardest content in the game. Mind you, the encounter that required me to have god tier armor maxed out, which requires material grinding and god tier weapons that I have farmed. Don't give me a fucking wellspring piece of dick vision of confluence. I want shit that matters. You know, I'm gonna read this like I'm passionate. I want perks in areas you can only have a chance at in master content. Example, vision of confluence with Firefly in column 3 and Rampage multi-kill clip in column 4. What should time loss Vogue weapons be? It should be that. I don't care about double column perks if they're gonna be filled with literal garbage. I want weapons you can only get in master content and then other time loss weapons. Bring back Praetorian foil and give me these static rolls from D1. Reactive reload and glass half full would be out of this world. Atheon's epilogue, Pray of the Timepiece. Bungie doesn't need to make the game easier. It is easy. The game is easy. Playing D1 raids and teaching people those raids in D2 are night and day. I do both to this day. Master content separates the good from the great. What needs to happen is time needs to be respected. I've played D1 for 7 goddamn years. The loot system for weapons, drop rates, etc. I can firmly state is superior to Destiny 2. I will die on this hill. D2's raids, spoils are excellent, and for fuck's sake, Bungie needs to stop nerfing one thing and buffing another, just to have the same situation happen. Whether it's on purpose or just sheer incompetence because half the community is a bunch of crybabies, it needs to stop. Either scale everything up or level it all down. Not everything needs to either be great either. Gimmick exotics need to be there, and I think they excel at doing this. There is so much more that I could say. Point I have that no one brings up. because I suspect most of you haven't invested time in a D1, which isn't your fault, but that's for another time. And Jesus Christ, Flustered Weasel, calm down, man. I hope I did that justice, though. I needed to get all that angry ranting in there. I only picked it up halfway through, but I hope it did. There's a lot to unpack there. You know, that's a whole video in its own right. But I think that, yeah, if you're going to be doing this sort of content, you shouldn't be getting stat rolls and mobility and all that. Make our stats count. You know, the amount of time invested and stuff. We should be getting stuff that respects that. And most of the time, it's like, oh, here's the same gun, just it's got 5 extra stat and you can put adept mods on it. Give me 67 plus stat rolls. Even if it's just a couple, it makes a difference. It's better gear. Like how we have the Artificer armor now that lets me put another slot on there. Imagine if that Artificer armor allowed you to take that seasonal mod that you slot on there and it like halves the cost of it. Then all of a sudden it's valuable. It's very valuable because now you can put other mods on it. It respects your time more because the rewards are more worth it. But there's a lot to unpack there. Fluster Weasel, that's a good comment. I like the passion. Keep that up. I would go over that a little bit more in depth and kind of try to be a little bit more critical about it. But I gotta love when people go off like that because, you know, it's fun. It's just great to see that. You want to be flat? You want to be like a plank of wood? You gotta have some edge to you. But moving on to poll number 6, I asked which has better PvP? Destiny or Halo Infinite? Every time I went to the Crucible, it was just Shatter Dive. So this was coming at a time where I was pretty dissatisfied with it because every time I loaded in the Crucible, it was like, oh, hey, Shatter Dive. And then people were like, it's not busted. And then even Bungie was like, yeah, it's broken, bro. And then, you know, you're just sitting there like, I told you. But you had people defending it all the time and everything like that. And it was a pretty toxic time to play the game. Like, honestly, I didn't enjoy PvP all that much. But now that I'm back into it and they've made all these shifts in the dynamic, it is better. You know, I loaded it up. I was playing it. I was like, this is good. I even picked out some wacky builds and I was just having fun with it and I was still doing pretty well. Out of 4,645 votes, 71% of people said that Halo Infinite does have better PvP than Destiny. We have a returning person in the comments, DBLCZX, who usually has very good takes on things. He likes to put a lot of thought into his comments, and he writes out the way he thinks. So this one, he says, a balanced game is most easily achieved when every character has the same moveset and the same abilities, and when every character has access to the same weapons, the same equipment, and the same vehicles. This is the truest definition of balance, as well as all uniqueness, advantages are gone, and the only thing left are skill and experience. Halo Infinite fortunately is entertaining enough to make this work. Not every balanced game is fun, and I'm glad to see that Infinite doesn't fall into this trap. It makes for a more fair PvP experience, where the only thing you have to blame is your own inexperience, your own lack of skill. That said, I never disliked Destiny 2's PvP. It's one of the few things that'll keep me coming back aside from harder content and new content. But even I can acknowledge that even though the sandbox is in a half-decent place, albeit not perfect obviously, it still has plenty of things that make you wonder how Bungie is going to address it, if ever. Beautifully said. Yet again, I don't really dislike Destiny PvP. In fact, I engage with it quite often. I've played quite a bit, and I'd say that I'm pretty good. I'm not like God tier or anything, but I sit at about a 2 KD, because like I said earlier, it's a crutch. But I've been using Wolf Tone Draw and a Hawk Moon, and I'm making it work. Frost Howl 93 says Destiny PvP is special. Not good, but unique and worth enjoying. And that's when I kind of shifted my mindset away from like wanting to be competitive and all that, and just noticing that this game is balanced like a turd. There's nothing good in here when it comes to balance. You just got to enjoy it for what it is. You know, you get bodied in a game by some garbage stuff and you let that get to you, that's when you don't really enjoy it. But if you find yourself just using like the goofy builds and you can make them work, you get a couple kills here and there, it is unique. You know, there's sort of beauty in the chaos. That's what I'm kind of getting at here. But yeah, if you're looking for balance, this ain't here. It ain't here. Axis 21 says Halo has more balance, better servers, better maps, more diverse and interesting sandbox, barely any one-hit kill shit, and the one-hit kill shit that is there, you have to earn. You don't spawn in with it. And that's how you can tell this was also made before the balance patches, when everything was just busted. This was around when you had like Shatter Dive running amok, Titans one-hit slams, the ability to one-hit people with your Nova grenade if you were a Warlock handheld Supernova. But yeah, Halo, now I'm gonna say this, might rub a couple people the wrong way. While I do enjoy the multiplayer, I just can't see myself sitting there and doing that for that long, because there's not anything really to chase or do. But that might just be because my brain is more geared towards a looter shooter and I actually enjoy that type of content more. So I've kind of fallen off of the Halo bandwagon. I don't like their monetization at all. In fact, it drives me nuts when I look at that. Like $5 for a shader. You know, I used to think that we had it bad in Destiny with just changing your color, because I had that in many other games. Even the MCC, that was something that you had built in. But I used to get mad at Destiny's shader system. But just the fact that I can buy with Bright Dust when it rolls into the store, and I can apply it to every single one of my weapons and armor. It's like skins. One shader is a skin for everything, right? And it's awesome. The amount of customization that we do have, it is there. It's just, but yeah, I'm not with Halo Infinite right now. In fact, I'm going to make a video on that eventually. But Cinnamon Skateboarding comes back and says, I play both a lot. Infinite is massively better since the devs can easily balance equipment and weapons, since it's not a looter shooter, and we don't have to worry about gun perks and special abilities like subclass and exotics. So from a purely competitive standpoint, I think he's getting it that yeah, that's Halo Infinite is more balanced, which objectively it is. You can't really get around that because they spent months meticulously crafting it, whereas Bungie will release a new weapon and not think about how it affects the rest of the game as a sandbox as a whole. So moving on to poll number 7, I asked, is the Titan Rylee Barricade useless and in need of a rework? Out of 4,705 votes, 81% of people said it needs a rework, and 19% said it's fine the way it is. Now I asked my resident Titan, Decius Jin, why that barricade blows fat ass. He said that when you're behind it, and you duck behind it, it doesn't matter because enemies can still shoot over your head and you're still going to get popped, you know? And in PvP, that barricade, you poke your head out, you're still going to get one or two tap by whatever. So in the comments, we have Black saying, as someone who personally prefers peeking over half-height cover over corner peeking around full-height walls, in PvE at least, Rylee Barricade is my preferred one, but yeah, it could use some love. A perk that lets kills from behind Rylee extend its duration and or restore its HP would be nice. Wouldn't really help much in PvP because there aren't enough kills to get and the HP pool doesn't last long anyway, but in PvE, 3 people could hold a Rylee against adds for a good while if a good spot is chosen. Maybe have your kills refresh and restore as an innate perk of Rylee and add an exotic that lets allies killing from behind to do the same. Now I'm not going to have too much to say on this one here, just because I'm not the resident Titan main, but I think that you should have some sort of utility behind it. They did a little bit of work on it before, but they removed that awesome reloading that it used to have. I remember that you could just stand behind it and just fire your weapons and melt bosses, which I thought was pretty cool. Gave it an actual use, but if you wanted the defensive option, you would choose the tower barricade. Trainer Shade says, honestly, it could do with a different shape. However, at the same time, I think it's going to be a lot better when the light subclass rework comes out. We already know of the Void Overwatch aspect, which will give those hiding behind a barricade some Void Overshields, which will make up for some of the loss of cover and probably be more effective on Rylee instead of towering. And it maybe even give it something similar to Titans, make it so there's a little screen above the current Rylee barricade that teammates can shoot through that has its own health pool, though the total area of the barricade would still be smaller than the towering barricade. If the screen ends up being too OP, they could choose to make it so it's a Titan-like screen, doesn't outright block enemy damage, but instead reduces it. That's pretty good. You know, I like that. Imagine bullets are coming at you, or like high boomer shots or whatever. They hit you, and it deals like 25% less damage. Boom, you're already living a little bit longer, and it has some utility behind it. I like that little idea of a little wall. Award-winning Chili says, I think that it should receive further effects like a small damage resistance for players shooting behind it. You really get headshot the second you pop the Rylee barricade due to how its low-profile design and so little damage resistant for the player just makes sense. And Lucky Hydra says, it's actually pretty damn good if you're kind of camping a lane. It pretty much sets recoil and flinch to 0 while you're behind it. Obviously at the cost that you're kind of sitting still, it still ups your dueling consistency. Yeah, but still nothing beats that tower barricade. You know, you put it up, someone's rushing you, or they jump over you, you just step over to the other side of the barricade, and boom, what are they going to do? Nothing. You block off lanes, you know, you get a defensive wall if you're getting shot at, and, you know, if someone has a little bit of a good angle on you, Rylee's completely useless. You're done for. You know, they're like an inch off the ground higher than you, they're capping you in the head, you're done. But, you know, you can make it work if you're good enough, but even then. On poll number 8, I asked, should there be an unlock feature for elemental affinities on your armor in Destiny? Something that we are actually getting when Witch Queen releases. Once you masterwork, you can swap your masterwork for just an upgrade module, which is so much better than all the cores and stuff I had to get before. But I was suggesting originally that you could spend an Ascendant Shard and unlock additional affinities in your armor and switch freely between them without an additional cost. Now, 3,118 votes, 87% of people said yes on all armor, 10% yes but on exotics only, and 3% said no. Now, Fly had this great idea talking about masterworks, where I'm not going to read this all the way through, but he was saying that you could masterwork in sort of tiers, where if you level 1 masterwork it, you only get 1 element unlocked. If you can masterwork it again, you get 2. And then you can just sort of freely swap between them, which would give armor a little bit more of a progression and make parting with armor a little bit more hard, because once I see a new stat roll, I'm like, and trash. And then I just slap a cosmetic on it because we have transmog. This would make it a little bit more like you invested in your armor and you're like, hey, I want to keep this. I worked hard on this to get my character up, and now I can just freely swap. But I can see how this could be a little bit more grindy in the long run just because of all the materials you would dump into the thing. And Stupid the Fish comes in and says, absolutely on all armor. Another guy detailed a level 1 to 4 masterwork armor, but for exotics it should immediately get level 4 and be able to switch freely between the 4 elements. Otherwise, he is completely correct, which I'm thinking he's talking about Fly's answer here. Another thing they should do with exotic armor is when masterworked, it should give a slight boost to the exotic perk, a passive boost to the exotic perk, sort of like a catalyst. Maybe with Vesper of Radius, for example, I pop my well down after it's masterworked, and the explosive radius is a little bit more, or maybe it does a little bit more damage. I wouldn't mind Catalyst for my armor at all. I think that that sort of progression is sort of nice when you have an RPG. Gives you something to chase, gives you that sense of actually getting stronger in a way. He goes on to say, for instance, with something like Mask of Backrest, when masterworked, it would give a boost to all stats, but it would reduce the cooldown of your dodge by 2 seconds and increase the arc damage boost for 2 seconds. It could also increase the boost to stats from 2 to +3, but then again, it's just a thought. Now, this would be a nightmare to balance with the backlog of all the stuff that we have in Destiny. So I don't see this ever happening at all. And I just think it's a very neat thing to sort of speculate on and think about. But it would be neat to see in game. You know, something like that. It's undeniable that it would be sort of cool. Just a nightmare to balance. Poll number 9, I asked, should Warlock's Will of Radiance durability be tied to recovery instead of resilience? And out of 3,430 votes, 78% of people said yes, and 22% of people said no. Starting off with Mobius, they said if they tied well durability to recovery, they might as well remove the durability modifier altogether. Everybody runs 7+ recovery and most run 10. The whole point of tying it to resilience was to make it a meaningful decision to spec into a less useful stat in order to improve the well. It isn't meant to be a good thing. It's meant to be a sacrifice you have to make if you want optimal well performance. You know, people say that there needs to be a drawback in a lot of stuff, but I'm of the mind that not everything needs to have a drawback. You know, that may be true in physics, but it doesn't need to be true in my fantasy worlds. Something that I think is a little insane is that even though they made these nerfs, I run 3 resilience in most endgame content. And I drop my well right in front of the boss, and I use the exact same strategies that I was using before the nerf. It literally does nothing. You know, as long as you're running a little bit of resilience, you are fine. It's not a meaningful decision at all, because a lot of the time you can still get away with the same amount of shenanigans that you were getting away with before. It just makes sense to me to run it with recovery, because that's the class stat that matters. Maybe they can do some adjusting to it so it's more balanced with the other ones. Honestly, I think they should just take it out altogether. At the end of the day, I'm still playing the game the same way I was before, but yeah, everybody does run 7+ recovery, and nothing's going to change that. Even now with these buffs, you think I'm going to switch to resilience? Unless I'm in PvP, then I'll just swap my mods to resilience. But no, recovery is too powerful. No matter what you do, that's the most powerful tool in the game, even for PvP and PvE if you're a warlock. Ember says, as a Middle Tree Dawnblade main, I absolutely think it should be recovery based. The class is geared towards healing and support. It only makes sense to tie those two together. That's what I'm saying. Dark Matter 98653 says, I am a warlock main, but I'd love to see more RPG aspects. I understand Bungie tied durability to resilience, but I want some build crafting to my benefit more. To benefit me more. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. If, for example, because resilience affected the durability, what if recovery affected the healing rate? What if I could share my stats with others in the well? What if the well could be used for more than just a big healing field? What if I could choose between a high healing / low damage buff well and a low healing / high damage buff well? As an example, this probably isn't a good idea as Titans still need a job with bubbles. If Bungie's going to mess with abilities effectiveness with your stats, I would like to build craft in an RPG that involves my character. I love that idea. Honestly, having more RPG elements for every class, not just Warlock. I want everybody to have more elements to really take advantage of their build crafting. I don't want to get crazy with it, because I know some games you'll look at all the stuff you can do and you're just like, holy shit. But just having a couple more RPG elements, I think, would do wonders for the game. In a lot of other systems, we've already gotten that with like Armor 2.0 and everything, but I would just like to take that a little step further. As long as they keep laying the groundwork, I think that would be a positive change. Sunshot with an ornament comes in and says, I mean, it makes more sense because that's the main stat for Warlock, but then the problem is all Warlocks like my Guardian just run at least 90 recovery, so well would still be busted. And yeah, I run it anyway. You know, nothing's going to change that unless there's like a massive shift in the way the game is. I'm mostly going to run it just because it affects my class items so heavily. But even so, it feels bad to be crippled for not picking into that spec, you know? This is your super, it's your ultimate, it's your big move, you know, your big finisher. I think they should remove it on Titan's bubble too. They're the defender class. They should just have that built into their super. That's their ultimate attack, you know? That's their big main selling point, and yet you're going to penalize it because they didn't, or they built into stats that they actually want to have. I bet you if people said, oh, like the duration of Silence and Squall to intellect, I bet you people will be up in arms about that. It's a balancing act. I'm not a game dev. I don't have stats, metrics, but I do know in like generalized gameplay, it doesn't really change too much for me. I'm still going to be playing the game the exact same way, unless there was a massive shift in the way the game was played. So moving on to poll number 10, I asked, has Bungie been crushing it with the recent armor designs? D2 Year 1 armors were kind of bland in my opinion. Oh boy, were they dog shit. These new ones are insanely legendary, and they release them at a pretty fast pace as well. Kudos Bungie. And out of 3,120 votes, 88% of people said yes, they have been crushing it. And 12% of people said no, they suck. Now I love the new armor designs. They're really well done. Even the ones from like Season of Arrivals is when I would say they start getting good. But a lot of the armors that you would unlock in game was just gross. They didn't have proportions right. They didn't do anything right like that. D1 had way better ones. Like overall, the raid armors and stuff you could unlock were way more significant. They looked amazing. And the best part is, Moments of Triumph came out, you basically got those for free, on top of having your DLC release. But I have to admit, they are more stylized, they are more unique, and I enjoy both of them. Now at least, not Year 1. But Blue Cloak says D1 armor looked better overall. I want more realistic armor sets compared looking like it came out of a party city or something. The D1 concept art for the classes is how they should be basing every class's aesthetic on, which I agree they should have more they're kind of just going wild with it, just kind of putting whatever they want in there, not really taking the themes of the characters and interweaving them. Like when I look at a warlock, I see that like scholarly type, the last city defender and everything, and you got that in Destiny 1, the more militaristic scholarly people, and Titans were more just militaristic soldiers, whereas now it's a lot more fantasy, it's a lot more stylized, it's not like grounded militaristic dark fantasy, like it's grounded in reality, it's more just happy, bright, funny fantasy that is grounded in fantasy, you know? Personally, I prefer the more apocalyptic look of D1's armors, sort of being the last hope of a dying race in D1, whereas in D2 I look more like a Party City guy, you know? But I can embrace that change because it does let everyone look so unique and wacky, and sometimes you want to look a little wacky. But Yukanto says, I like that Warlocks for once have decent looking set in the mix. It's been ages since I genuinely enjoyed the look of a new Warlock armor, and both the Dawning one and the Thorn one look good and shade are well. After being Omega Scam for Halloween, that was a nice change of pace, even though, to be perfectly honest, I mostly still rock armor from the Sunset raids because D2 Year 2 armor has not been matched since Black Armory forever. Get the hell out. Don't you ever tell me that D2 Year 1 armor was G. No, I didn't really like Destiny 2 Year 1 or Year 2's armor all that much. That's my personal preference. But Warlocks do have some decent sets in the mix. But maybe that's why, you know, now that I think about it, I am a Warlock main. You know, there's many people, streamers and everything out there who will play all three and get the full experience, but I am strictly a Warlock main. I have not touched the other classes. That's a lie. I have all the exotics for the other classes, but I only use them to farm when I'm trying to get like a raid exotic or something. That's just keep like changing the goalpost there. I only play them for fun whenever I want. Destiny Warlock main, we didn't really have too much good stuff in the way of armors and all that for a long time. So maybe I'm a little bit bitter about it. Cerebral Assassin says D1 armor was overall better in my opinion. It kept a Halo-ish look, but it still was extremely unique. I kind of wish they'd add some more simpler armor like D1 had to contrast these big fancy armors. Something I can say that attests to that is that I use Servant Leader and I paint it black and it looks just like a normal gun. It doesn't look like a fantasy weapon, and I love it. Same with the Kostov. It looks so unique when everything is all this like wacky, zany, fun, cool stuff, right? When you're looking at the armors and weapons that are more modernized and just normal, like something that feels out of place in the world because the world is so extravagant, they actually become more special than the extravagant stuff. So when I'm using like Servant Leader and I'm using Kostov, I want more stuff like that. But if you applied that to armor where I just got like a SWAT gear or something that still kind of looked like Destiny armor, you know, it still had that Space Warrior theme. John Romero says it wasn't until earlier this year that D2 started getting decent looking Warlock armor. That's what I was getting at before when I dissed Yukantos. Get out of my dojo. I'm really looking forward to the Witch Queen raid armor. Armor that they have in the Witch Queen, I love the look of that. They did a really good job. The Titans are crushing it though. I don't know what's wrong with the proportions of the Hunter's hood because they look goofy as hell, but they are crushing it with all the other armors, and I can't wait to get my hands on it in-game. Year 1 armor sucked. It was mostly reskins of the same robes, capes, helmet, but the deal is this armor doesn't even come close to, say, taking armor from D1. Yeah, D1 armor was hot. And that's all I gotta say about that. If you haven't seen D1 armor, go look some of them up and put them against the sets that you've created. I bet you look disproportionate even and weird, because the proportions in Destiny 2, they're a little odd. Warlocks are like stiff as a board, but have like these extremely long legs. Titans have the biggest pauldrons I've seen. I have no idea why. You can store whatever you want in those things. Hunters look alright. They're already proportioned. And their stance isn't that annoying inside of the menu, but I don't like the Warlocks one. I wish it was more like militaristic, like, yeah, I could beat you up. But now we're on to our last poll before we finally close off the video. I asked, did you like Destiny 2 Year 1 to around Warmind? And out of 4,358 votes, 29% of people said, yeah, I enjoyed it. 14% no, I disliked it. 49%, whether we like it or not, we stepped into a war with the Cabal, and oh boy. I should have known that was going to happen when I posted that one. Just kind of went for the meme. But then I wrote, that's right, I put 2 joke options, bet you're confused now. And then immediately under I said, please answer the question. This is a serious poll. So moving on to the comments. The Box Thief asks, I did like Year 1 of D2 a lot at first, but then whether we wanted it or not, you motherfucker.